Fortunate Living. I'm Nadine and I'm the Fortunate Living nurse. I make videos to provide encouragement to working moms, primarily nurses. And this video is about how I utilize the technique of periodization to decrease the amount of time that I have to spend homeschooling my children while I work full-time as a nurse. So if this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, tune in. And while you're here, go ahead and like and subscribe. There's tons of videos that'll just show you our journey. Now I have a 6th grader. And because I use this periodization, I am now to the point where I spend about 2 hours a day directly working with my new middle schooler. So what I needed to find was a way to successfully get my children's academics where I wanted them to be. And I was looking for just on level, just for them to be where their peers are, the expectations of the state that we lived in. And I needed to be able to do that without a whole 6-7 hour day because I work and they had other activities that they wanted to do. And we were not just going to sit in the house for 6 hours a day. So what I found was I needed them to be more independent. Now my Grant, when I started homeschooling him, he was in 3rd grade. He was already reading by 5th grade, I know he was reading on an 11th grade level. So he was more than capable when I started homeschooling him in 3rd grade of doing his work independently, reading his homeschool textbooks and doing the work. And I would have to help him occasionally. But so with Nathaniel, when I pulled Nathaniel out of school, he was in the first part of 1st grade and a struggling reader. So I said, oh my goodness, I need him to catch up on his reading. I didn't realize that was going to allow him to be more independent. So when I pulled Nathaniel out, he was in the beginning of 1st grade. I pulled him out during Thanksgiving break, and he still was at step 2 of reading, the 5 steps of teaching them to read via phonics. First, the letters, names, then you pull out the vowels for the 2nd step and teach them the short vowels. Then the 3rd step, teach them the sounds of the consonants. Now they know that B is B, B is B, but the sound B makes is B. That's when they can start now watching little YouTube videos. B says B. That's what I had for Nathaniel, and he loved it. He danced, he's my kinesthetic learner, so he would dance around. And I would say if you're choosing videos off of YouTube, be careful. You don't want ones with too much animation or a story. Somebody riding a bicycle and the raccoon chasing them and they talking about B for bicycle. That's too much going on for my children. That's going to be distracting for them. So pick the videos where it's basically the letter, the sound, and a good beat that goes with them. So now you have taught them the letter name, all the letter names. The 2nd step, the vowel, short vowel sounds. 3rd steps, the sounds that the remaining consonants, the remaining letters make. And then 4th step, you start blending. You teach them to blend the words. When Nathaniel went to school for kindergarten, he was at the point where he needed to start blending. And I'm like, hey, this school had a really good reputation. I was even paying for tutoring. He went to that school from kindergarten all the way to kindergarten, graduated with the math award, started 1st grade. When I pulled him out in November, he still couldn't blend. He still had not progressed in any reading from when I put him in a year ago. I think his tuition was like $9 grand, 10 grand, and that's just a tuition. I paid uniforms, anything. He went in needing to learn to blend and left needing to learn to blend. So we went in with, when I pulled him out, that's where I knew he was, but I went back again and made sure I reviewed, make sure he hadn't lost anything about the short vowel sounds, the letter names, and he hadn't lost any of that. But the reason I wanted to review it as well is because I didn't want to start him where he was, where he needed to make achievements. I wanted to start him where I knew he was going to have success. And he kept on saying, this is so easy. This is so easy. Yes, I know, but you need to master it. He already mastered it, but I just started one step back to build his confidence. In school, he was not getting anything right when it came to reading class. His behavior was perfect. His math was perfect. They loved him. He was cute. But he had no confidence in being able to succeed in reading because he did not progress for that entire year. He was stuck on learning to blend. So within very little time, I was able to teach him to blend. So what you want to do is, and then the final step now is then teaching the long vowel sounds. Now you're going to need to find a curriculum that encompasses this, that is a phonics curriculum. I'm giving you these 5 steps because when you go online and you're looking at a phonics curriculum, or you're at a bookstore or education store, everything that says phonics doesn't follow this old school phonics methodology. They'll sprinkle in some sight word, learning the shapes of words, word scramble, all that mess. That's not good for the brain. Don't play tricks. Teach them the way you want them to know it. They don't need a crossword puzzle, a word match. You can use word match when you get to comprehension. When you are teaching the 5 fundamental steps of learning to read, I don't believe in all that stuff. Those workbooks and stuff, don't bring those in until later because it just confuses their brain. So the 5 steps of teaching someone to read phonetically that you need to look for in your curriculum. You know, I don't believe in making up curriculums because we're working. We're not necessarily trying to homeschool on a budget. We have enough money. I was spending $30,000, over $30,000 sending my 3 kids to private schools. It wasn't that I didn't have the money to send them to private schools. They weren't getting what they needed from the private schools. So when you go look for your curriculum, it might not be the cheapest curriculum, but it might not be the most expensive curriculum. Make sure you find these 5 things. This is even if you have an older child. I'll give you an example after I go over the 5 steps of an older child that was going into high school, that their parents needed to take these steps. So first, make sure they know the letter names. The letter names. The sounds that the short vowels make. Then the sounds that the remaining consonants make. Then teach them the long vowel sounds, long vowel sounds. Then all of the other irregular rules. There are other irregular rules. One example is you will have taught them Y says y, but there's an irregular rule that sometimes Y sounds like I, right? So that's at the very end though. You're going to teach it at the very end. So make sure you find a curriculum, look through it, look over it. You can reach out for a consultation. You could talk to a teacher that knows phonics, because what's happening is that you're thinking, like if we look at my Nate the Great, he was there in a small classroom, everything that needed to be there, still couldn't get past blending, which happens between step 2 and step 3. Couldn't get past blending. So it wasn't that, obviously it wasn't his intellect, because once I got him home and worked with him, and we only worked on phonics for like 30 minutes a day. We did actual phonics instruction, like 30 minutes a day. Within 90 days, he was above average in his reading, which was first grade. It wasn't hard to get the first grade reading level. Teaching reading is not complicated. Trust me when I tell you, teaching reading is not complicated. Now, if it's not the child's intellect, which I have a special needs child, so there are obviously children where there is something going on with their intellect. It is the reading approach. It is the educational approach. Nobody wants to admit that. And as parents, we don't know that it's the educational approach. This is what I have been told by the numerous teachers that I'm surrounded by that now homeschool their kids. These are the teachers that went to school and learned how to teach long before everything was so political, where it was literally just about educating the children. So even if you have a new sweet little teacher and she's struggling, if she's 20, 30 years old, I don't know that they taught her at her teacher's college real phonics. And we know she didn't learn it. So, and I'm just going to say she, because that's what 90 something percent of the teachers we've encountered are she's. So you can't even blame her because she don't know what she don't know. And she frustrated as a teacher that's really loving these kids, wanting to help them. And she's like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. So if you're starting off with your child, even if they're going to school, like suppose you can't pull them out of school right now, you can still work on these things 30 minutes per day. Let me give you an example of the child that she graduated from eighth grade. Now it's like, okay, this is the public school she's supposed to go to for high school. They don't live in the hood. They live in the suburbs. We're talking about suburbs, okay? Where the schools is, everything's supposed to be better. So they know something is wrong, right? Like her parents are not the most educated people either, but they know she's not learning. So she comes to my house, like I actually had her come to my house, and I had this resource where you could do an assessment. Now, this is not something that's going to hold up at any school because I don't have all the PhDs or whatever, but it was so simple. And it had like little passages for her to read. And based on these passages, I didn't make this up. Some person with the qualifications made it up for homeschoolers. We have the passages and you could say what level this child is on. When we did the passages, I'm surprised because I'm not thinking that this child is behind. She's obviously intelligent. I've been around her, smart girl, social girl. She was getting along with everybody in school, boyfriends, girlfriends, beautiful girl. I thought they just thought she was a little behind. So when I do this assessment, now I told you she just graduated from 8th grade. The assessment said she was reading on a 4th grade level. And I trusted the assessment because I have used it with my children. And then when I would send them to the professionals to get their reading assessed, you know, their standardized testing, it lined up with what this person gave me. So I'm looking at this girl and she's like, what? And I was like, why do you think you're only making C's in classes? She's like, oh, science is hard. History is hard. You know, everything is just hard. And I'm like, but you're obviously so smart. So what did they say about your reading? And she said, well, I have trouble reading. I go to a special reading class. I said, oh, okay. What did they say in the reading class? Because I wanted to say to her, because this girl, I could talk to her. She was 14 years old and very mature mentally. And I'm digging. I'm like, oh, you get pulled out for a reading class? Like in 8th grade, you were getting pulled out? She was like, yes, different people had to get pulled out. And all they worked on was our reading. I said, oh, okay. Her mama ain't never told me that. Her mama didn't say that. I don't know if the mama knew. So I said, well, what grade reading level did they say you were on? She said, I don't know. I said, okay. So she said, tell me, what did the test say? Because I had already told her that it was a test to see what grade reading level she was on, to see, you know, where her parents could start. So she knew that. I didn't want to tell her. She's a great sneeze. Okay, all right, it went away. I said, well, I don't know if this is right. I said, but it's saying that you're reading on a 4th grade reading level. She said, oh, you know, when I would go to that reading class, the book that we used had a 3 on it. She did not realize that that 3 meant 3rd grade. And she said, you mean that book we were doing in the reading class was a 3rd grade reading level? It probably was, because according to this, you're on a 4th grade. But then I told her, this is good news. This means that this is the reason you're not doing well in your regular history class. Because now she's in the 8th grade. They sending her to the regular science, history, math. I said, this is the reason you're doing so poorly in your other classes, because they're written on an 8th grade level. You are reading on a 3rd grade level. I said, so that's why everything seems so hard to you. So what I told her parents were, if y'all do pull her out the homeschooler, which I think they should, if you send her to high school on a 3rd grade reading level, they don't have time to teach her to read. You see, they didn't have time to teach her to read in the middle school. I said, pull her out, teach her to read, homeschool. This was North Carolina, easy to homeschool in North Carolina. Homeschool her, work on the reading, and then get her back, then send her back to school. By 10th grade, she'll be ready. Because my husband and I went for our certification at the institutes, what they said was, you can teach a 5-year-old to read in, it was like 6 months, less than 6 months. When a child is older and they've been used to guessing and misinterpreting things, it takes about 9 to 12 months to get them where they need to be. But as long as there's not something wrong with their intellect, they can do it in 9 to 12 months. And I said to Mom, that's what I told Mom to do. So, they decided to do whatever they wanted to do. But even if your child is older, grown people can learn to read. It doesn't matter. They can still learn it. It's putting in the time and the effort. And once you have helped your child to be independent in their reading, then you move on to comprehension. So that's where they read stories. They learn to answer questions about the stories. They're capable of it. It's just that you have to teach them how to think about what they've read. But that's not the major problem. What the major problem is that these kids can't read. So, because what this 8th grader did to me, the one passage I gave her, she read the passage and put words in there. And I was like, that word doesn't make any sense. So then when I looked at it, I said, oh, that's not what that says, baby. So then I said, so then what does that sentence mean to you? She told me she really didn't know what the sentence meant. So it looked like she was slow. She couldn't comprehend. So then when I told her what the word actually said, oh, Miss Nadine. And then she knew what it meant. We're sending these kids into 8th grade, high school, even college. We sending them to, well, at least they can go to community college. No, they can do more. We want greatness for these children, but it starts with the foundation. So anyway, do get that reading. Take the time to find a true phonics reading program. 30 minutes a day. Then you read and get the help them to comprehend, get a comprehension literature program. A lot of the literature programs, it's answering questions about the passage you have read, but you can't understand the passage you have read if you can't read it. Once Nate the Great could read and understand the little kindergarten stuff, then the 1st grade stuff, then he has started 6th grade. Our goal is 2 hours. Our schedule, I work with him 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day. Haven't you guys noticed I've been able to make more videos? I have been able to do consultations because I don't have to even do 4 hours a day anymore. My one boy is in college. I still have my daughter here. With her disability, she can't last no 4 hours. I work with her where I can. And that is the basics. That's where you start using that periodization. Reading is first. Reading and comprehension is first. Once you get that done in your 2 hours a day that you can do it, then they're going to become more independent. All right, the next video I think I'm gonna make, because I've gotten questions about, okay, Nadine, you talking about school in 4 hours a day, 2 hours a day. My state requires me to have so many hours. We live in Texas now, you don't have required hours, but this is the way I've been homeschooling. So I will do a video on how to make the required hours, because don't nobody want CPS knocking on their door talking about you truant and you're not doing right. So I'll tell you how you do that easy. And that's easy as well. The brown girl from West Philly did it. You can do it too. I know it. Okay, take care, fortunate ones. Bye.